Welcome to Belmont Poetry Night. I'm Monica Korde, your host and the Poet Laureate of Belmont, California. We meet on the third Tuesdays of every month to celebrate the spoken word as makers, listeners, and admirers of poetry. We come with featured guests and an open mic, inviting readers of all ages. We've gathered for several years at our favorite physical venue, the Belmont Library, since the pandemic, and our thriving poetry circle has transitioned to this virtual space, and I'm grateful this allows me to welcome poets and listeners from across the globe. It's lovely to see you all, those who have just joined in as well. Thank you for coming. As the Poetry Night tradition goes, please feel free to share in the chat where you are joining us from. And thanks once again for being here and zooming in. Well, to begin with, summer is a season of warmth, light, and growth. And tonight we have the perfect setting to immerse ourselves in the beauty of words. And talking about poetry, for me, it has always been a grounding space, a place that allows me to be. And I feel it is also a bridge that allows us to go back and forth and connect us across time and space. So, curating our poetry night with Summer of Memories as the theme felt meaningful to me. And I found myself thinking of how memories engage with poetry, both individual and collective, and that memory looms large in contemporary verse, reminding us that a poet's job, among many others, is not simply to observe, but it is to remember, to resurrect the past and adapt to the present, which perhaps helps in making sense of the self as well. And one of my favorite poets is Naomi Shihab Nye. And I thought this poem by her would be a great way to set the tone for our evening. So here it is. My memories live in my mother's phone. Her dress shimmered tiny pink and green flower gardens like a tablecloth in a rural 20th century American farmhouse. Something tender you never saw since you were a child too. Pleats and folds along the bodice, tucks and stitchery made with patience that barely abides anymore. Her hair tightly braided and coiled in circles against her perfect head with tiny red ribbons at elegant intervals. But when you said, memories, her face fell. She whispered, we left them. We had to leave everything in our house. My cabinet, my doll, my books, my pepper plant, my pillow. Nothing now we knew before. But we have a few pictures. My memories live in my mother's phone. Thank you. This poem is from Nye's poetry collection titled The Tiny Journalist, published in 2019, and a collection that explores themes of childhood, memory, and social justice. And Nye very often characterizes herself as a wandering poet and says that much of her poetry is inspired by her childhood memories and her travels. And you will find this in many of her other poems as well. But not until you meet or connect with a poet who engages with poetry in this way, do you truly understand how memory becomes vital in finding out what makes us who we are. Speaking of which, I'm so grateful to have connected with Maw Shein Win, and I'm honored to have her as my featured guest tonight. Much like a wandering poet of her own kind, through her poems, she moves across time and space effortlessly. And those of you who know her know how remarkable she is. So she doesn't really need one, but here's her introduction. Maw Shein Win's most recent poetry collection is Storage Unit for the Spirit House. which was nominated for the Northern California Book Award in Poetry, longlisted for the PEN America Open Book Award, and shortlisted for Caliba's Golden Poppy Award for Poetry. She is the inaugural Poet Laureate of El Cerrito, California. Win's previous collections include Invisible Gifts and two chapbooks, Ruins of a Glittering Palace and Score and Bone. Win often collaborates with visual artists, musicians, and other writers, and her Process Note series features poets on their process. She teaches poetry in the MFA program at the University of San Francisco. Along with Dawn Angelica Barcelona and Mary Walmer, she is a co-founder of Maker Mentor Muse, a new literary community. Win's full-length collection, Percussing the Thinking Jar by Omni Dawn, is forthcoming in fall 2024. Congratulations on that, Maw, and what a thrill to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you for that lovely introduction, and thank you for hosting this series, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm really excited to hear your poetry later this evening, and I'm just really happy to be here. So I will read some poems for you tonight. I'm going to begin with a few poems from Storage Unit for the Spirit House. And I want to just show you, can you see it? And the painting's actually right up there. And my friend Adrian did the cover. So I just want to say a little bit about the process of writing this book. It began as a group of poems I had been working on around the idea of containment. I had been writing poems initially sparked by a curiosity about storage units, and then continued to explore the notion of containment by writing pieces around various forms of architecture and other holders. And I will reference the Nats, which is spelled N-A-T-S. And the Nats I refer to are animist deities, which some Buddhists believe can play tricks or even wreak havoc on one's life if these Nat spirits are not appeased within their spirit houses. And I thought about these spirit houses, which I had seen while visiting Burma, Myanmar, where my parents were born and where my family lives today. And I wrote 6 spirit house poems to complete the book. And I'm going to share with you the first one, Spirit House 5. As a child, I did not climb trees. Instead, I gathered leaves that flew to the ground. The elms were tall in the fall, the neighbor boys cruel. One left a dead kitten in a box on the doorstep. I made homes among the leaves, safety in gold, yellow, brown. Invented a family who lived in a treehouse, green twig, the mother, cracked branch, the father, 2 ferns, the missing sisters. And now I'd like to share the titular poem for the book, Storage Unit for the Spirit House. The father at dining room table, shades drawn, wobbly throne. The daughters with their brown, shaky hands. A forest gnat haunts the master closet among the clothes moths, felt wolverines. Daughter number 1 hiding behind a juniper bush, bright longies, wooden handgun in metal case. Daughter number 2 sleeps with a long broom next to her bed, mint chocolates under pillow. 5 a.m., the father drops a cold, wet towel on her face. Storage unit filled with boxes of LPs, Joni, Dylan, Carly. Back cover of Jimi Hendrix Experience. On 2 hits of acid, this will blow your brains out. Dusty military jackets, punishment belts, piles of lock boxes missing keys, jars of Nescafe, VHS tapes of Burmese pop singers. Daughter number 3 listens to father's records in the den, altered music room, sits on the piano bench near the door, the father in armchair, Joni singing A Case of You. Forest gnat flutters above in air smoky from Kent 100s. I just want to stop there for a second. And I know that part of the your series is to see if anyone has a question. So please feel free if anyone has a question.
Uh, yeah, I definitely have questions for you, Maw. So if you would like, I can offer that to you. But yeah, I wanted to actually go back to the couple of poems that you shared and quote some lines from them. The one that you just shared, storage unit filled with boxes of LPs, Joni, Dylan, Harley, back cover of Jimi Hendrix Experience on 2 hits of acid. This will blow your brains out. Dusty military jackets, punishment belt, piles of lock boxes, missing keys, jars of Nescafe, VHS tapes of Burmese pop singers. I love how you have brought all of this in your poetry. Even the previous poem that you opened the evening with, I made homes among the leaves. What a line and a way to craft all of it. And to quote Burma-born poet and poetry translator Coco Tet, whom you've worked with also, said that memory plays a big part in your poetry. And I especially like how he puts it, that selective memory is preserved like a pickle in your poetry. How cool is that? Uh, Also, how our very own Kim Shuck has put it about your, while reviewing some of your books, is that reading Maw Shein Win's poems is like visiting a museum of activated moments. I love that. And from your exploration of memories through physical objects in storage unit, to in your other books also that we hear poems from, your reflections on illness recovery and the Burmese American identity, which is visible in Invisible Gifts. And now in your latest book as well, Percussing the Thinking Jar, where this collection of dream-like poetry delves into the experiences of aging. Um, could we interpret memory as portrayed in your work, not merely as recollection, but as a path to uncovering deeper truths? And how do you approach poetry as a memory holder?
Yeah, so I love this question. I love this question because, and I love the theme, Summer of Memories. Um, you know, as we know, memory is, a floating um, um, interpretation and experience. My sister and I joke about how we remember different events in our childhood. And I will have one interpretation and she will have a completely different one. But I feel that maybe it's not even so much the memory, but it's how you remember something. And so I really, in my poetry, one of the things I like to do is think of different ways. I might think of a certain memory, and then I might come up with different interpretations from different points of view of that memory. So how would my sister remember this? How would maybe an observer, watching this event happen, remember this? And one of the things you brought up was that list of objects. And I feel like objects are portals to memories. So I really use objects a lot in my writing. I find them just so inspiring. And, when I was writing Storage Unit for the Spirit House, thinking about the jars of Nescafe, I mean, it just, if you're if you're Southeast Asian, you might probably have grown up with jars of Nescafe in your home, and I've had other you know, listeners and readers comment on those jars of Nescafe because it really captures like a collective memory, I think, for many people, and as does music. And you know, when you talked about the list of Joni, Carla, Dylan, and you know, what I remember, a very fond memory of my father, is that he loved music. And so I, as a very young child,
Mm,
would listen to his music and, you know, have these memories of how we talked about music. And even though he wasn't a musician, he loved to just say, you know, I'm like 6 years old, Ma,
mm.
listen to the guitar solo on this Jimi Hendrix album. So, you know, I am a list maker. So
Mm,
process is writing down um, a variety of things, you know,
mm,
might be a list of objects that are just right in my view, you know,
mm,
but a list of objects that I remember from 15 years ago.
mm,
Um, or it might be, you know, overheard conversation on a bus, or it might be something from a dream. And so I feel like list making is very tied into memory making, because
mm,
you know,
mm,
all of us, we're all writers, right? And maybe we keep journals, or maybe we're recording, you know, just remembering events, or objects or people, you know, in our minds. And I think there's so much freedom as poets
mm.
uh, that we can use that poetic memory. I actually found this quote today that I wanted to share with you all. Let me see if I can find it. By Milan Kundera. And I just thought it was so lovely. Okay, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, here it is. There seems to be a specific zone in the brain that we could call poetic memory that records what charms us, moves us, or gives our life its beauty. I really like
Mm.
that quote, and I just wanted to
That's a
share.
beautiful quote.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah, thank you, Mo. I mean, it also, when you were talking about it, I was thinking of your, one of the other poems that I came across was Objects from Invisible Gifts. And you haven't read it yet, but I hope you do. And one of the lines that has resonated with me a lot is, which, well, if I may quote that, is I objects in terms of distance now, reachable, then not. And gosh, there's so much truth in that line, and it is a hard-hitting line as well. I objects in terms of distance now. It is so true when you talked about looking at objects around us, and even from 15 years ago, they are a distant memory, and but there is a way of remembering things, and you do it so artfully and effortlessly, Mo.
thank you. Well, Monica, that was my next poem I was going to read.
Perfect. Let's hear it then, Mo, please. Thank
Yay.
you.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so I would like to share, let's see, this poem from Invisible Gifts, which arose from my observation of objects. And I wrote this Invisible Gifts uh, during my period of post-surgery recovery. I had double hip replacement surgery, and I had months where I was home writing. And one of the things that happened was that the objects that we are surrounded by, I, you know, just really paid attention to the objects. I mean, even very simple objects like a clock or my glasses, etc. And I really started thinking of objects as these multiple portals for poems, you know. So I would look at an egg or an orange. And so, anyways, I'm going to share this poem with you all. Objects, a blue glass bowl of miniature oranges, 3 inches from arm's reach. I eye objects in terms of distance now, reachable, then not. This morning, I drop a plastic tub of butter on the kitchen floor. I try to reach it with my grabber, a temporary extension of my arm. The lid slides off. The butter tips, and my cat starts to lick. The objects in my life with more significance: wheelchair over umbrella, walker over work shoes, bed tray over sunglasses. I measure distance from hand to knee to shin to heel. I think of Burma miles away, the grocery store miles away. My father's voice crackles through the phone miles and miles away. You were born in Burma, and then, you're my niece, right? I push my body upwards from my wheelchair. I know that above the ceiling are wood and plaster, and eventually sky and birds. Objects found and lost. My ex-husband's brown sandals, loose feathers from a bird that my cat killed, a large smooth seed given to me by a florist in Tokyo. I look down at the floor, trying to remember. And thank you. And this is another poem that incorporates objects, which is also an invisible gifts. Home. The steps that lead to the front door are flecked with silver dust and shimmer when the sun is low in the sky. When the toilet flushes, it echoes 4 times. Mismatched mattresses, Egyptian king frame, a broken oven with a working stove. The piles of paper, the piles of clothes, the piles of files, objects collected over years and years. The slippers from IKEA so guests won't scuff the floor. The houseplants that manage to live with little water. The dust bunnies, the hairballs, the silk underwear. The bent spoons, the dented pillows, the dental floss. The boxes in the garage filled with old pictures, letters, and record albums from the 70s. Wrapped candies, Moroccan mask, tea bags, plane tickets, hospital bills. In the office closet, the ceiling is moldy, dark spots expanding, too high to reach without a ladder. The paint on the balcony wall peels off in shapes of rabbits and deer, a cigarette butt floating in a yellow flower pot. The neighbor crosses the street. Why the recycled bins overflowing? Why the flow of strangers leaving with office chairs and toaster ovens? Why the missing husband, the dent in the car? Why the real estate agents in their well-fitted suits? Why the cracked driveway, the overgrown juniper? One fall, an old friend announced upon walking into the living room for the first time, I agree the view is fantastic, but you're not supposed to live here. The hallway is a long corridor that leads to the front door. The doorknob is diamond-shaped and needs to be jiggled and turned to the left to be opened. Thank you.
Those were brilliant pieces, Mo. Thank you for sharing those. And you talked about being a list maker, and clearly there is a method to madness when it comes to incorporating those lists in poetry. And you also mentioned a little bit of this process of putting it to memory and putting those lists together. And I wanted to come to my next question with that, is that gaining a glimpse into a poet's process can be incredibly enriching. Speaking of which, your process note series comes to my mind, and these process notes that you solicit from poets provides readers with a bird's eye view of the poets at work. And I connected with our Bay Area poet Shikha Malavia, who provided a fantastic testimonial about it, and I'd love to share that with you more.
Of course.
She says, Maw Shein Win is one of the most generous poets I know in terms of sharing knowledge and fostering community. The Process Notes series that she curates is illuminating in so many ways. It gives others the opportunity to peer into the inner workings of poets' mind and craft. Each process note is so unique and insightful. It is a gift to all of us in understanding the magic of poetry making. In many ways, poetry is about self reflection, and that is what writing a process note is like. A poet is often so steeped in the process that they forget how hard they work. Having to write a process note makes one realize the labor behind the words, and I thank Maw for helping me realize that when she asked me to write one for her series. And if anyone's interested, I'll share a link to Shikha's process note in the chat. Um, just taking a moment there. And I've read some of these process notes, and they are such a treasure, Mo. It's as if one is listening to the inner song of the writer's very consciousness. And what a privilege then to witness that raw rhythm of the consciousness. And which brings me to my question: is that what inspired you to start this series? And if you can walk us through your method for curating it, and as a multi-genre writer yourself, what does your own process of writing look like?
Yeah. Well, Monica, I am so touched by Shika's lovely note. Thank you for sharing that.
I'm
Uh,
so glad.
oh, that's so sweet. Uh, the Process Notes series um, basically began. Well, firstly, I want to say that I have always been interested in process. I have a lot of friends who are musicians, painters, dancers, and of course, many writer friends. And one of the first questions I ask is, please tell me about your process. I mean, just in general conversation. And then, you know, when I teach at USF in their MFA program, and of course, we have guest poets to come in. And when I was thinking of the questions, I realized that what I was really interested in was their process. Their process, everything from writing a line, then to the poem, and then to putting the book together, you know? And I just find every person has a different story about their process. So basically, this lovely Canadian poet named Rob McLennan has this website, Periodicity Journal, which is everyone, please check it out, because I don't know when this person ever sleeps. He has like 20 different things on there that are
Yeah, it
incredible.
is a really cool website. I'll be sharing a link to that, Mo.
It's great. But he invited me to start publishing the process notes there, because basically I was just doing it to for my students. I'm not just, but I was inviting poets to talk about their process and even write a process note. And my students just loved these process notes. And then, yeah, I think maybe it's been 2 years. Oh, I can't remember. What is time? but he started publishing them, and I published 2 a month. So everyone, I'd love if you could check out the Process Notes series. It's just been really a joy to work on this. And I think you asked me, about a little bit about the curation of it.
Yes.
Honestly, I guess the focus would right now is poetry,
Mhm.
and poets with new books, because I feel like
Mm.
it's kind of a great way to, just help poets promote their new offerings. And I really want to um, share different styles. Like
Mm,
I don't really want to just have one school or one certain style of writing. So,
mm.
I mean, I'm trying. So, but
No, it makes sense.
my goal is really to highlight, many different styles, different poets, and just help them, talk about and discuss their new books. And yeah, so that's where the Process Note series, how it started.
Do you have any tips more for poets who would like to write their own process? How can they get started with it? It feels like a stream of consciousness kind of writing, but you don't want to do that. There is something that you adhere to while jotting down those thoughts as well.
Right, right. Okay, so oh my gosh, that's what I was going to talk about. You just reminded me. So one of the things I do in my class is that I ask my students to keep a process journal.
Mm,
And basically, and usually they're like, "What's that?" And as they are writing their poems, to just jot down notes, either on the page or, well, in their journal. And whatever those notes may be, they might be thoughts that arise at the moment or afterwards, associations,
mm,
words, I mean, even drawings. I mean, it really, honestly, it can be anything. And, of course, I don't read their process journals. Um, uh, I recommend that they keep one all semester. And students have told me at the end of the semester, I really appreciated doing the process journal.
mm,
And as far as advice of writing one, everyone, if you do end up checking out the process notes series, you'll see that they're all very different from each other. People have taken many,
right.
different approaches. And
Mm,
so I really don't think there's one specific way of um, writing a process note, but I think it's real because I'm working on my own process note now for my
mhm.
book that's coming out in the fall. And I'm just like, oh, wow, this is hard.
It
But
is, it seems very challenging, even if it is your own process that you're sharing.
yeah, but it's really, I feel like it's very valuable and
Mm,
to be able to write and talk about your own process.
mm, mm.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'd say about the process note series.
Well, that's really insightful. Thank you so much for sharing that more. Please, if you'd like to share another couple of your poems as well.
Yeah, so, well, kind of on the same topic, I'd like to end with a few poems from Percussing the Thinking Jar, which will be arriving in the fall, and I'm really excited about it. And I hope you all come to the parties for it. So I wrote a little tiny process note about it. Around the beginning of quarantine in 2020, I sometimes felt as if I were trapped in my mind, or what I would come to call my thinking jar. I channeled my energies and worries into multiple notebooks, cataloging dreams, nightmares, sensations, and instructions. And in the logging and listing of the fragments of my monkey mind, I was ultimately able to lighten some of this mental and emotional overload through writing these poems. And when I revisited these notebooks, I had many, many, many notebooks. I noticed that my writing revealed these certain patterns that I wasn't aware of. And these patterns led me to create a new form, which I call the thought log. And really, I won't tell you every single thing about it because it's a little too long, but every poem thought log has 16 lines and most likely contains like an observation, a thought, a question, a sensation. And also, one of the patterns I noticed in my multiple notebooks that I was writing these juxtaposed pairs, two words, but in threes. So I had 6 words, and I wasn't really consciously doing it because I was writing so much during those first 2 years, 2.5 years. of the pandemic. And it was so interesting to go back and look, like I started highlighting those patterns. So anyways, this is the first poem in the book, Thought Log. Oh, I was wondering, would people like to see what it looks like on the page? Should I share my screen? Can I do that? Or would people be interested? Yeah, okay, okay. I'll just share my screen. We'll see if it works. Okay. Just so you can see it. Oh, oh, it looks like it's off. Okay, no worries, no worries. Okay. Um, okay, thought log. Oh, I guess it's on now. Okay, here we go. All right. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Cloud. Thought log. Swinging on an old rope from the edge of a cliff, a lit up room, a giant X covered in sequins, gone lawns, fan crowns, drone town, an orange ceramic swallow from Portugal, my love's laughter from the study, reimagine cures, amber nimbus, ochre hawks, spring shambles. I believe in the healing power of crystals. They thought my hair had turned white due to pandemic stress. My sinuses are being occupied. I feel lonely, and then I don't. I eat another bowl of kitchery, the bits of ginger. Sorry fabric, mild steel, jade traps. What are we in for? The somatic therapist leads us on a guided visualization through a sacred grove. I swim in a field of pathogens. So that's one of my thought logs. I have 25 of them in my book. And I do have to say this collection is quite long. It's 180 pages. And it's, I think it captures my processing, speaking of process, and my formulation, of the processes I was experiencing. And yeah, I'd like to share one more poem from my book. Okay. So I continue to write observation logs, weather logs, sleep logs. I wrote a syllabus log that is in 15 modules. I had to write a syllabus and I was having such a hard time writing it, but instead I wrote a syllabus log, which was really fun, and log thoughts. So I'd like to share one of my sleep logs. Sleep log. I talk while I sleep. Sometimes I laugh for a long while. T tells me that I speak quickly and he can only hear my side of conversations. I dream about caves, lakes, drapes. I flap my arms with much effort, fly upwards, hit a smooth white ceiling. My snores are delicate, T says. I hear a disembodied voice. Snap, alert. For years, nails and shards of glass flew from my mouth. I imagined this as rage. I sleep under 4 heavy blankets. Dream about losing a purse, even though I don't own one. My sister visits me. She died 6 years ago. She swings a leopard skin pouch around on a golden chain. She is glowing. I whisper, everything is going to be okay. And I would like to end with a poem for my 2 dear longtime friends and collaborators, Mark and Adrian. And while we were in college, we all lived together, artists, poets, dancers, assorted weirdos in a tiny house in Long Beach. And we've kept on making all these years.
And Maw, sorry to stop you, but interrupt you. But if I may, before you share and close your reading with that, could I ask you a question first, and then we can hear your poem again?
Of course.
Yeah, so that we don't want to have too many questions and none of your poems there. So just to intersperse it and balance it out. Well, I was thinking of all of these poems, and Mary Marcia in the chat actually asked, "How do you keep up with so many logs?" And that's exactly a question that was brewing up in my mind as well.
Oh, you mean how do I keep up with so many logs? Okay, so I keep different notebooks. So do you know that store
Ah,
Daiso?
w-
Daiso. Oh, well, anyways, there's a store.
oh,
Yeah. And so I just bought all these different notebooks. And for some of the notebooks, yeah, Daiso. Um, uh, I just noted dreams, and another
mm,
random observations, and another one just like language, found
right.
language, overheard language.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I have to say I'm not that organized. So Mary Marshall, good question, because I have a real sometimes a notebook. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to find dream notebook. And then of course, because I'm not so
And
organized,
you need to have a separate log for which notebook to go to.
like I am embarrassed to say I spent a lot of time looking through notebooks online. So maybe my process needs to be tweaked a little bit. But so I guess in answer to the question of how do I keep up with so many logs, um, like I said, the first 2 years of the pandemic, I basically, as all of us did,
Mm,
not leaving the house. And I really did not leave the house, I think, pretty much, except for walks outdoors. And I had a lot of excess energy. And I mean, I I don't know, it was strange. I just couldn't stop writing. Um, I mean, it hasn't been like that, I would say, in the last year and a half, but those first couple years, it was just nonstop note taking, list making, logging. And I think that's part of the reason this book, upcoming book, ended up so long. But it
mm.
also has drawings by my friend Mark. So
Oh,
16 Sumi ink drawings.
that's
Um,
beautiful.
and I would
The
send,
cover page is beautiful.
thank you, thank you. I would send him poems, and then he would send back a drawing. And then we
Mm.
went back and forth, over the last 4 years. And
Yeah, that was actually my question to you, Mo, is alongside poetry, you have been engaging with other art forms and disciplines, which has been so essential to your work, whether it's music or visual arts, video making, and dance as well. And my question to you was, how has your experience as a collaborative artist influenced your poetry, and what does it mean to you for you to be an interdisciplinary artist? And if is there a specific collaboration that stands out in your memory?
yeah, great questions. I've always loved collaboration. I feel like there's some kind of magic that can happen when you have two people or three people or even 20 people who are working on something together. Now I also want to preface that with saying they're not always successful. After years and years of collaborating, like trust me, like they're not all successful. But because I'm a process oriented person, I really truly love the the weird synchronicities, the surprising moments, the unexpected, orientations, the experiments that come up that can come up when you collaborate, and especially when they're multidisciplinary collaborations. So like I'll just talk about two collaborations that I'm working on right now. Some of you may know Evan Karp. Evan is a lovely poet. Yeah, I know, Tony. Evan Karp is a lovely poet and musician, and just all around guy around town who does a million things, and curator. And So Evan and I started this duo called Vata and the Vine, and he does the music, and I read my poetry. And for Storage Unit for the Spirit House, we made an album, and he did some of the vocals, on the album, and it's online, it's free. So if anyone wants it, I can put it in the chat. And it was just such a fun um, way of, having my book, but also having it in music. So now we're doing another album with the thought logs. So he is working on it right now. We have a meeting tomorrow, in fact, and he's making the music to my thought logs and doing all sorts of interesting percussive uh, uh, elements, adding percussive elements to the recordings. I'm really excited about that. And then another um, project I'm working on, which might inspire all of you, because I think one of the things sometimes as writers, and trust me, I really go down this road of just, oh my gosh, it's when am I going to be finished with this poem? Or is it good enough? Or what is the reader going to think? So I started thinking about ways I could collaborate where I wasn't so tied to the outcome, that it was more about the freedom of creating. So this is actually brand new. It's called Literary Cherry, literarycherry.com. And my friend Adrian, who I dedicated that poem to, he and I write in real time, and we post it on the website as we're writing. We make no changes. We post images from our phones that are like accidental photos. I have so many accidental photos on my phone, it's not even funny. And everyone, I have to tell you, don't delete those accidental photos. They could be great visual prompts. So, we post photos, and then we just write in real time and in a very short space of time. And it's been wonderful working on this. So so those are two current collaborations I'm doing.
That just sounds very, very cool, Mo. And knowing you, you are so engaged with the community. Before you share that final poem, my final question to you was that as a community-oriented poet as well, your work has been so extensive and far-reaching. You have been the Poet Laureate of El Cerrito. There's the Process Note series and the Maker Mentor Muse, which offers writing workshops and literary salons, which benefits a large community of writers. And we'd love to know, how has your role as a community contributor interacted with your role as a poet?
Well, I think it has to do with like being uh an active collaborator. Um, I I mean, I even one of the things I started doing we were talking about this earlier at the beginning of the pandemic. I know a lot of people can't stand Zoom, but I actually have to say I'm grateful for Zoom. I've been able to write with a different writing friend every morning. Um,
Mm,
so whoever I'm with, we'll first, for the first 10 minutes or 5 minutes, we'll catch up, and then we'll talk about what we're going to work on. We work for 40 minutes, I mean, alone, but together, you know what I mean? And then for the last 10 minutes, we'll maybe share or talk about how our writing went. And I do this Monday through Thursday. And it's just a great way for me to start out the day
mm.
with writing, and also writing in community. So as far as, well, I mean, as far as my writing, how it affects my writing, I mean, of course, as writers, we're all writing, in uh, our own worlds, our own thinking jars. But I think where community comes in is in the, like, what we're doing right now together is the sharing, is the sharing and talking about um, poetry and how it affects us and moves us, and um, Many of you might know Lisa Rosenberg.
Mhm.
But we started meeting. Yep, Lisa, she's great. We started meeting at the beginning of the pandemic. And originally we were going to exchange work. But then we started talking about poetics and just started getting really excited about it and spent the last 4 years meeting every Tuesday morning for an hour talking about poetics and being kind of geeky. Really fun.
Well, all of it sounds fantastic, Ma. Thank you so much for sharing that. And please, I wouldn't want to delay any further from you sharing that poem for us.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is my last poem, The Grisham House, for Adrian and Mark. It was velvet, then noise. There was silence on sandpaper. I lived with an artist, a dancer, a sculptor. We drank brown derby beer. We lived by railroad tracks and talked to trains, sang among weeds and peach trees. My voice deepened an octave. The sculptor warmed up his explosion. We constructed a time capsule, buried it in the yard. I dropped in a poem, the artist a bottle cap, the dancer a Polaroid of our house. Yes, my octaves welcomed me. Yes, I welcomed them back. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma. I deeply appreciate and value so many insights you've shared with us today and your poems that show such unlimited range. I wouldn't say they're just memory holders, but truly vessels that hold the essence of our shared human experience. And you've captured those emotions, stories, dreams, moments so effortlessly that serve as a timeless reminder of our collective journey. Like you said, it is a lot of memory is collective. So thank you for sharing that, Mo. And I'd love to open the floor briefly for comments from our audience. So please, everyone, whoever would like to speak, please take a moment to unmute yourself, share a word, and I will just share links in the chat to Mo's upcoming book and workshops and projects and all that she does. Please go ahead.
You can ask me anything.
I don't have a question, but I'll just say that was a wonderful selection of poetry. Thank you so much. It was great to hear you again. It's been a long time. This was hooray for Zoom and poetry.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Great to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for all the lovely comments, everyone. Thank you.
And I would like to say thank you. This is Phil. Up in the corner in my screen. I don't know where I am on your screen. But in any event, one of the things, I think your first poem or second poem made me think that 2 years ago in Ashland, the best play and one of the best plays I've ever seen was called Cambodian Rock Band. And when you were talking about all of this rock music and how before things went south in Cambodia, that Western rock music was a big thing. And anybody gets a chance to see the play, definitely do so. It is, if they do it well, it's a striking piece. But thank you so much. It was very filling and thinking about process. Mine's, I'm sure, not unique, but not normal either.
We're all different. Thank you, Philip. I'm going to check that out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ma, this is Lois, and I just wanted to say I absolutely loved all of your pieces that you shared with us tonight, and I took copious notes. I mean, some of the things that you talked about in your processes, I just couldn't write fast enough. So I'm definitely going to go back and grab the process thoughts and make sure I get that process notes. So thank you so much for opening up my world in poetry just a little bit bigger. Thank you.
Lois, thank you. So excited to hear everyone's poetry tonight. Yay.
Well, thanks everyone for sharing your thoughts. And once again, Maw, so grateful for your time and your poetry that carries such deep wisdom. It was an absolute pleasure to hold this conversation tonight and host you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Monica. Yay.
Well, with that, we are going to stop recording this segment. Those of you who are in the Zoom room, please stay online for the open mic segment of the evening. To the YouTube audience, thanks for tuning in and hope to see you for next month's virtual Belmont Poetry Night. Good night.